All right, guys, what's going on? So, just wanted to do a quick check to make sure that I can actually be heard. Um, my last video that I did, my last live stream, for some reason, very interestingly enough, the the audio was like muted. I don't know why per se. And it looks like there's I've got an echo going on now. So let's see what's going on here. Okay, let's see if this fixes it. I've got an echo going on now. So let's see what's going on here. Okay, let's see if this fixes it. I've got an echo going on now. So let's see what's going on here. Okay, let's see if this fixes it. Okay, so let's just make sure if this is coming through without any echoing or anything like that. It should be good now, but let's see. Yep, okay, so we're good now. Yeah, and as far as for the volume, it should be okay. Don't know why YouTube decided to uh, mute my last video. I mean, if you go and like watch the video, it literally can't even hardly hear what I'm saying, which is funny because the entire basis of what this series is about, right, is in regards to um, talking about the biggest thing that I hear people that are part of like any community, atheist community or non-religious communities, this gematria community. The thing that they like to talk about the most is that oh well, we don't believe in Christianity because it was all made up by the Jesuits somehow, or it's a form of mind control somehow. And I just a little backstory on me personally. I mean, I don't think anybody cares, but I can understand where people would come from with the thought process of, well, all Christians are just useless because they just sit there and say, well, Jesus is coming, right? Yahusha's coming, and we're going to be saved, and that's all that there is to it. So we don't do anything. We just sit back with our hands off the wheel, and when he comes, he comes. Now, the reason why I can understand that is because, yes, like I think as all people are, at least, I mean, in the last 1.5 years, right? We're literally at the mercy of uh, what we're taught, right? So we're born into this world, and if we are taught doctrine that is not accurate, we don't know any better. So my whole life growing up, I was taught that, yeah, Revelation is the book of the Bible that talks about Jesus coming back and the end of the world and all this and all that and all the great stuff that goes along with that. Okay, yes. So and I don't know if this was like a collective effort to psychologically get people to believe this. Um, However, in the past year, I've gotten more clarity on the Bible itself, you know, on the doctrine, on the words that are said in the Bible. And so now I'm aware of this, like that there's, 100 different kinds of subcategories of Christians. And, I've always known there was like Baptists and Seventh-day Adventists, and you've got your fundamentalists, and you've got whatever, right? There's a million different ways to skin the cat. But there is only one truth. right? That's the thing. There's no halfway truth. There's no quarter of the way truth or an 18th of a way truth. It's just it's either it's true or it's not. If you'll excuse me, I have a lozenge in my throat so I can talk properly for a while. But um, yeah. So as far as like there's the truth or there's not, right? And there's people that are like, well, the Bible's not true. It's propaganda. It's made to have people just bow down and blindly obey and authorities and this and that. But the funny thing that I would say is, do you not look at like most right wing or conservative Christians when we talk to them about the things going on in the world? None of them trust the government. None of them trust anybody. Nobody believes anything, right? So that doesn't pass the litmus test of just like blindly obeying authority. Now there are verses of scripture that talk about obeying authority, but they're always taken out of context. You see, here's the thing about the Bible. The Bible is a book. Now it's not just like any ordinary book, right? That just like you can go sit down and type it up and put it and publish it and make all these New York Times bestseller awards off of it. No, the Bible is something that kind of transcends in our mind what we perceive as literature. Okay, and by that it's because it is it's inspired scripture. It's divine word. There's something very interesting about the Bible if you take it in its original text, right? Like if we all knew Koine Greek and we all knew ancient Hebrew, there would be a lot less questioning, a lot less concern coming back to us about what the Bible says, because there's so many iterations of it, right? I mean, just look at the list of all these up here. I mean, how are you supposed to, know, okay, well, which one is the one that's right? Like, so I get where they're coming from, but at the end of the day, what I'm trying to say, though, is this. My rebuttal to anybody, I don't care who you are, I don't care if you're a Christian, if you're not a Christian, if you're a Muslim, I don't care who you are, what you are, right, what your status is. My belief is that there's only one truth. And if we know the actual truth, then we can easily shatter the preconceived notions that people have about, oh, well, Christians are just waiting for Jesus to come, and so they're not doing anything. They're not doing anything. And that, I really wish the last video was not, I think, somehow sabotaged. I don't know, but I mean, it doesn't sound like you can't hear anything I was saying, and it's really disappointing because I kind of went into a couple different tangents on that. But so here's what the gist of it is, okay? So we've seen multiple times that people talk about the number of the beast, right? That's in what, Revelation 8 or something like that. No, 13. Sorry, 13, 18. So it says, right, this is written by John, right? Well, he was on the Isle of Patmos, okay, as a prisoner. And it says, here is a call for wisdom. Let the one who has insight, right, intellect, right, calculate. So to reckon, to compute, to calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and that number is 666. Okay, you can see here, this is 660 and 6. So he specifically says that, okay. So there's a whole, like, encompassing umbrella, like, prophecy, I guess, that people want to be fulfilled of this number of the beast, right? So, I mean, and again, I will agree that I've been one to, like, be like, oh, okay, this makes sense, like, when I heard these things, right? So you have, oops, that's not the right one, if I learned how to spell. So you have the word computer, you have the word internet, you have the word uh, Vatican Hill, you have the word vaccine. No, vaccination, I'm sorry. Right? And if we look at these ciphers in Gematria, which is an ancient practice, I mean, Gematria is something that, yes, was spoken about in the Kabbalah, but there are things in the Bible that predate even Kabbalah, so, that's fine. But if we look at these ciphers, and we go into the mathematical, right? So we look at the Sumerian and the English Sumerian. We get these 666 numbers, okay? We can obviously see here. Vaccination is 666. Vatican Hill is 666. Internet is 666. Computer is 666. So it's very easy for us as a people to be like, look, there it is. There's the number right there. And what Sumerian Gematria is it's based off of the sexagesimal system. So if you know ancient Sumeria, okay, known as Sumer, is the earliest known civilization in the historical region of southern Mesopotamia or south central Iraq, emerging during the Catholic and early Bronze Ages between 5th and 6th millennium BC. So it's one of the cradle of civilizations in the world, right? Along with ancient Egypt, Elam, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so Sumer is what became of right? So you have the Uric period, and then it was like now modern day Iraq, but was also at one point Babylonia. So it's a very prominent area in biblical history, right? Super ancient, super, yeah. So you've got right? So this is where Abraham was from and left. And yeah, so you could look at here even ancient Babylonia. It's that same area. You know what I mean? So it's associated with early civilization and using what's called sexagesimal. So sexagesimal is base 60 counting. So it was a way that they could easily count on their hands, pretty much, right? And you can see here, it's used in Babylonian mathematics. Well, here's the thing. So would it make sense for us to look at Babylonian, Sumerian, sexagesimal counting systems for the book of Revelation? Well, I would say no. And here's why. Because the audience that Revelation is written to, okay, it's a single revelation. It's not called Revelations. Even at the very beginning of it, it says this is the revelation, right? So, one and only. That's it. There's no multiple things going on in this. It is a revelation, a vision given to John. But the audience that this is written for was for Hebrews. Okay? Now, there's a lot to be said for Israelites and the Hebrew, history. I mean, if we look at a map of the ancient biblical world, right? Because it can be kind of hard to keep track of, like, where were they and what is all this stuff. But you can pretty much easily see right here. This is it. This is where a lot of the history, right, of the Bible takes place. I mean, you had all, like, yes, up in, for the New Testament area, like Athens and all the areas where they came through here and they came across through boat and everything to get into the Middle East, as far as the Romans and Greeks are concerned. But you can see here that this is Abraham's journey, right? So it starts in Babylonia, and comes up through here. And they get exiled back into Babylon, right? So the Babylonians came and sacked the temple the first time, completely destroyed the first temple in Jerusalem. And the Hebrew people got exodized again, right? They were already in Exodus when they were in Egypt, but they got exodized again back into Babylonia, right? The Babylonian area. And if you read, like, the books of that Ezekiel prophesied and going down all the way to Malachi, you'll see that they came back from there. So this isn't a very important area to them, in their heritage, in their lineage. However, Revelation, though, was to the modern day churches, and there's no denying that. Revelation 2 and 3 covers the 7 ecclesia, right? So church isn't even a real word, just so you guys know. Like when you're like, oh, I'm going to church, or oh, I'm part of a church. Technically, that's a made-up word that is not in the Bible. There's no such thing as a church in the Bible, but it's ecclesia, right? So the 7 ecclesias that are being talked to, this is who the letters were for, right? So would it make sense for them to use a Sumerian sexagesimal base 6 counting system? I mean, I guess if we're saying, well, this was the cradle of civilization, so all prophecy came from there, but that's not true. There was some prophecy that was, like angels visited people that were in this area, and that's true, but in regards to where Revelation happened, it was on the Isle of Patmos. It was way over here. It was very far away. So when you're talking to, a contemporary audience that is Hebrews, right? Because that's what the first ecclesia were. They were all Yahudim. They were, Hebrew people that were of the Jewish faith, even though Jew isn't a real word either. And they were believers in Yahusha, in Christ, right? In the Christ, in Meshuach, the Messiah. So they said, okay, we're going to literally break away from the Pharisee and Sadducee hierarchy that had been ruling all over for, a long time, 1,000 years or so, roughly. And we are followers of the Christ, right? Of Yahusha. We believe his word, but they were still Hebrew, right? So what would make more sense for, like, okay, if you're going to use gematria, because that is what it says, right? I mean, let's go back to 13:18. This is true. Like, it straight up says, here is a call for wisdom. If you look at the Greek, it literally says, here is the wisdom, right? So literally it's saying this is like, listen to what I'm about to say. The one having understanding, right? So the one who understands what I'm talking about, let him count the number of the beast, for it is a man's number, and the number of it is 666. So if you have understanding, right? I mean, literally, this is what the word means, and there's, you know, a couple of different meanings of it, as you can see here. If you look at the Strong's uses, it's used all over in Ephesians, Philippians, Romans, and 1 Corinthians, in the book of Luke, and and even Colossians, 2 Thessalonians, right? And it says in 17:19 even. So again, here is the mind having wisdom. So listen to what I'm about to say. These are words of wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains where the woman sits on them. Okay? So it's definitely used for like, hey, listen to what I'm telling you because this is smart. Well, if we know who was the head of the Roman army during the time of when Revelation was written, it was Neron Kaiser, right? Emperor Nero. And truthfully, if you use Hebrew gematria, you get the number 666. So, I mean, we can, if you really need me to, we'll look at it. So let's look at the Hebrew alphabet. And that wasn't the ancient Hebrew alphabet, because Hebrew and ancient Hebrew are 2 different things completely. But we can see that in this time period, they would have used like more modern Hebrew, which is what the Hebrew gematria calculator would be. So let's just take a look here and see, right? If we're using Hebrew gematria, and if we had N for Nero, right? So N, where is it? That's going to take a second probably to do it, but, you know, I just think it's worth doing so we can see for ourselves, you know, what it actually is. And it actually might be, I'm sorry, I didn't even use like the right one first and foremost. I used M, so I'm sorry, it should be N. Well, let's just do this. Just to make it easier. Okay, so yeah, it'd be Nun, then Resh. So R, O, where's our O? There we go. And then N again. And then Kaisar. And you could, yeah, that thing they would do as QASAR, right? Let's see. I'm trying to find where the actual letters are, because it'd just be quicker to go in there and copy and paste them from that. Okay, here we go. Yeah, Neron Kesar, Neron Kaiser. Let's see. Da-da-da. Where is... I mean, realistically, I just really want... would like to have just a list of, like, all Hebrew... the Hebrew alphabet. Okay. Okay, here we go. Yep, and then... So, Kai... or Q. It'd be Kaiser. A... S... A... and then R. I got 668, but whatever. It's 666. I just effed it up somewhere. Oh my gosh. Probably because there's something in here that has to be done. But anyway, you can see that, yes, that's the number of a man, right? I mean, that's really what it says. You know, it's a number. It is a man's number. Well, Neron Kaiser was the man. He was the head of the Roman army. He's the one that led the Romans down for the destruction of the temple in 70 AD. So my question is, well, then why are all these rituals done around this number? If this number is done, it's done for, man. Revelation happened, right? So if we can agree that revelation happened, and be like, hey, it was a foretelling of what was to come for the new kingdom, where we're all under a new covenant with Yahuwah and Yahusha. Then how can anybody say, oh, well, Christians, they're just sitting around waiting for the end of the world? Well, if you agree that revelation already happened, and I mean, there may be a great day of judgment. You know, there's some stuff to be said about that. But as far as like the world ending and fire and brimstone, and we'll just sit back and let Jesus handle it all, right? Well, you know, it's a very good idea to be able to say to people that are like that, hey, no, this is actually what happened, and we can still live by the teachings of early Christianity, the teachings of Yahusha, and the words that he spoke, and the words that the disciples spoke, and the apostles spoke. And we can then say, okay, you know, we'll still be good people. And regardless, like that's why we need a new covenant, because man is flawed, right? I mean, that's just the truth of the matter. No matter what way we split it, it's that's why we need a new covenant. Okay, but that doesn't mean, oh well, we're just doomed. So you know, like we're just not gonna do anything. Um, so yeah, it's kind of funny when you can throw back in somebody's face like, oh no, yeah, like I'm Christian, but if I believe that revelation already happened, and I know that you know the eschatology of the world as a whole still goes on, but the history of the Bible is what it is. It's done. It's closed. That's it. then what, right? Well, let's talk about the Jesuit order, and let's talk about the numbers that they always have that apparently are around the number of the beast, right? So I see it a lot where people will start throwing that out as like oh yeah, it's the number of the beast, and this is why, and this, and again, I'm totally guilty of it, totally guilty of buying into it. But we know that that's the number of Neron Kaiser, right? So there's nothing to be said about that number. But let's look at yeah, I don't know. Let's look up gematria number of the beast rituals. And let's just look at videos, right? Actually, no, wait, this is even better. Let's look at gematria effect news. Oh, perfect. So let's see how many posts have been about this, I guess, right? Like, let's just look up. Can we look up 666 and see how many posts there have been about this? Apparently this. I mean, you can see that, yeah, okay, this is the Jesuit order. They're doing 666 rituals all the time. It probably just goes on for pages and pages. And again, like, I do think that there's some weird things that have happened with, like, coronavirus and Operation Clade X being 666 days before the outbreak was officially declared, or the pandemic was officially declared. So I can agree with that, but at the same time, if this number has no meaning anymore because it was what it was, then what power does it really hold? You see, that's my whole meaning about it. What's going on? Bass Conning Financial Advice. My whole meaning behind it is, do we just, as humans, give power to that meaning because we saw it in the book of Revelation at one point? And it's funny just because it's like, growing up, you're told like, oh, it's great tribulation and great judgment and all the crazy things and the war in heaven and oh my God, it's the end of the world. And then all of us go up to heaven, and then New Jerusalem comes down, and so we look at this number and we're like, oh my God, man, this is it. This is like the for sure sign of what's going to happen when we see this number. Well, I mean, it sure seems like this number is popping up a whole lot, right? Kind of stops losing meaning, I think, if it's just like everywhere all the time. A lot of entertainment industry people, 666, they rap about it, they sing about it. Iron Maiden had the whole song Number of the Beast, and it was great song, great everything. Yeah, I get it, but at the end of the day, if it holds no real meaning, then what like, why are we just letting it take precedence in our thought process? Let's talk about, like, anyone that is a gematria advocate, and they want to be like, Christians, you're the problem because the Bible's fake. What? Like, I can't wrap my head around that. I'm like, do you know how old the Bible is? Like, do we need to really go back to the basics on this? And let's talk more about, like, the book of Enoch, right, which is labeled Apocrypha for ridiculous reasons. Not even, there, like, it's a whole thing to go into about the book of Jubilees and the book of Enoch are inspired scripture. They can be tested against scripture to be proven to be scripture, and they're being held in the archives in the priesthood in Qumran, right, which is what's called nowadays, but it was really Bethabara, which is where John the Baptist resided and where he baptized Yahusha. I mean, and these were like temple scribes that literally, like, people don't understand. Okay, imagine if you woke up every day and we're talking like you woke up in the middle of a freaking desert, man. Okay, like, let's really look at where Bethabara is, right? Like, let's look at, like, what is Bethabara? in the Middle East, obviously. Okay, so here's where it is. Okay, it's on the other side of the Jordan, and I mean, it's just like literally, this is where you woke up every day in the middle of like a desert region, right? And these were the pools that people would get baptized in. I mean, Yahusha literally walked into one of these pools and got baptized. Um, yeah, I mean, but yeah, you woke up and then look at this. It's just like a valley in the middle of the freaking desert, man, where there's water. And so you woke up every day, right? And your job, your job was to just copy down scripture. Like that's literally all your entire task of life was. Do you really think that you would be copying down things that weren't inspired scripture? No. Right? But that's where these copies of Jubilees and the Book of Enoch were found. In the archives where they found all these other, Psalms and the Old Testament writings, because that's what people don't understand. That's what scribes did. Now, these were exiled temple scribes. They were exiled out of the Pharisee and Sadducee temple because they didn't want them keeping the records that they were keeping, right? So they were cast out. They weren't in Jerusalem, right? They weren't in Judea. They were cast out on the other side of the Jordan River. But it was such a, it's such an important thing that they were doing. I don't know why people would they just, I guess they just can't grasp the concept of it. Like, it's too easy for us nowadays to be like, yeah, well, they probably had some translation errors and they probably made some stuff up. And like, no, that's not how that works, man. Like, they literally were like, okay, we'll be exiled out to an entire different place, away from our homes, away from our families, away from everything we've ever known, because we believe so strongly in what we're supposed to do, right? They're temple scribes, man. That's what they're designated to do. You copy, and you do not mess anything up. You don't mistranslate. You don't misinterpret. You just copy what was said divinely. And so if we look at like the Book of Enoch, I mean, do you know how old that is? It's literally the oldest written piece of anything ever. It's the oldest book ever. And there's even older writings than it that haven't survived, but they're mentioned in the Book of Enoch. They're what Enoch wrote down because he was the one that was actually like the first to know what writing and language was, right? And so for you to be like, well, it's all made up, it's all fake, like, you can't, like, what? You literally have no idea what you're talking about if you were to say that, because you don't understand, I guess, how far back the timeline and the history of the Bible goes, I guess. I'll be right back. I have to go get some water. Okay, so anyway, so let's just talk about that. Okay, you can't be like, oh, well, it's all fake. It's all, and especially if you were to have this knowledge that Revelation already happened, right? Then and I mean, and don't get me wrong, there are some things in Revelation that like are probably hard to explain. To be like, well, when was this? Like, when is it that this happened? No idea. Like, I mean, we're talking about, like one thing that I can say for sure is that it says every eye will see him, even those who pierce him, right? So behold, he is coming with the clouds, and every eye will see him. And those, let's see, oh yeah, right, and those who pierced him. So like even those who pierced him, and will wail because of him all the tribes of the earth. Yes, right? So saying, yes, that's what's going to happen. Amen. Truly, truly, truly. Uh, so it's kind of hard to, okay, how do you reconcile that? Did every single person see him? Did every single eye see him when he came down in judgment to destroy the temple? I mean, you'd think that there'd be a lot more uh, eyewitness accounts of that from all over the world, but I don't know. Are they using hyperbolic language? Like every person will see him. Well, I mean, if we look at this word every, right? The word pas. It means like the whole, every kind of, and it says all the so it's really used like all, every, all encompassing. So every eye should have seen him then, right? Or else Revelation isn't true. I don't know. You know, it also says that he might experience him. Every eye will experience him. So yeah, there are some things that are hard to say, but I don't know. I wasn't there at the time, Uh, Another thing that people don't understand is like, oh, okay, well, it's like he says here, I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. So that has to mean the end of time. It has to mean, well, no, right? So the Alpha, meaning the first letter, right, of the alphabet, and it's got a Hebrew origin, right? So if we look at what this is, and it's funny, it's the first of Strong's. If it has a Hebrew origin, then what? Like he's saying, yeah, okay, I'm the beginning, right? And then the Omega being the end of the alphabet, the finality, so the all-encompassing. So of all words that could be said, he's the beginning and the end of them. But then they say here, the beginning, right, and the end. Well, this end here is telos. But if you look at when this word is used, this word is actually meaning like a goal, right? The principal end, the aim, the purpose, the end of the event, or the end of the issue, right? So he's saying that he's the beginning and the end of the goal. What was the goal? To establish the kingdom for all mankind, which could only happen with the new covenant. And for the new covenant to happen, the old covenant had to be done away with. And that would be the temple in Jerusalem. It's funny because there's so much knowledge in the Bible, and so many people just want. I don't know why so many people are so adverse to it. I really don't. It's very confusing to me why people don't understand it. So, like, here's the truth of the situation. I've said it a bunch of times to multiple people that I would love to go up against them and challenge them on, what they are, whatever, what they believe or what their thoughts are or their preconceived notions are of the Bible. If they are not believers and they think it's all fake and made up and brainwashing and everything like that, there is one man, this guy, RPM Trey Vietnam, who I don't know who it is, but apparently he's a African American man who has guns and likes to talk about gematria when he's open carrying firearms. And I get it; it's a statement that's being made by him, like it's a cultural statement and societal statement. I get that, but he even was like, "Oh well, the Bible contradicts itself." This was like in a comment section, and I was like, "Oh okay, where?" right? And he couldn't, like he didn't want to produce the evidence of where the Bible contradicts itself. Because I said in the comment, the Bible doesn't contradict itself. It never does. And he's like, haha, yeah, it does. Haha, you're so stupid, pretty much, right? He didn't say that, but like you can kind of tell, like, that's the undertone of like, you're so stupid. How could you not know that the Bible contradicts itself? And so I was like, okay, well, hey, if you can't produce the evidence, homie, we can go take a look together. Let's get on a live stream, you and me, and I'll be more than happy to show you where it doesn't contradict itself. Because if the Bible ever contradicted itself, trust me, it would be widely known. I mean, we're talking that would be like front page of the newspaper, because then every atheist would be like, aha, you see? Right? Like, here's the contradiction that we've been looking for to blow the entire theory of Christianity out of the water. So I still have an open invitation to this gentleman to, hey man, let's talk about it. You're more than welcome to, you know, come on a live stream with me, and I'd love to talk to you about it and tell you why you're wrong, and tell you why it's okay to know about the Bible and to follow its teachings. It actually is much better than sitting here plugging words into a calculator all day. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with. I think gematria is great. I think it's a very good thing to know, because I believe that there is the Jesuit order, which is the synagogue of Satan, who are Yahudim, but are who claim they are Yahudim, but are not, and they lie. I think that still has followed into this current day and age, and that's who runs the world, and it's good to know what code they run by, but I don't think there's any power to them. I don't think that there's no power to these, if they've got these 666 numbers everywhere, the Antichrist and the, well, okay, well, there's only one thing. Well, I guess there's like two things, right? There's two things that could happen in the world to end the world. One, nuclear war that just ends everything. Two, a giant solar flare that comes through and is like the same as nuclear war. It just comes through and ruins everything, right? So if the Jesuit order has control over both of those, then good for them. But from what I understand, then why haven't they, like, why would they need to code 666 and Antichrist into that? That has nothing to do with that, right? That just has to do with launching nukes, and maybe the nuke code is 666. That'd be kind of funny. That'd be a little like taste of irony before the end of the world. But I don't believe that that's the case at all. Now there's also the other side of that. There is a man named DJ Stonewood, or DK Stonewood, but I think he goes by DJ Stonewood. Yeah, he's got a very strange YouTube channel. I think this is him, though, if I'm not mistaken. Again, somebody that likes to say weird things about the Bible. But they're like, yeah, Christ is crystal. He's crystal vibration. I'm like, dude, you're so far out of line with that. And I'm sure both these guys, their hearts are in the right place, but I will gladly be like, yeah, like, okay, let's debate that. He had said that the manna was monoatomic gold, so like when the Israelites were wandering through the desert for the 40 years, they were given monoatomic gold to eat because it binds to receptors in your body and blah, 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 right? Okay, like, no. I mean, like, if that were the case, why wouldn't we all just eat monoatomic gold then? Why would we eat food? Why would, like, I mean, unless that's just what this dude lives off of, and that's his diet, right? Is monatomic gold and water or something. I don't know, man. It's interesting how people have different takes of things, and again, I'm not saying like, well, what I say is the right. It's got to be 100% right, but I mean, when we go to prove it against itself in the Bible, there's really not a whole lot of misinterpreting what I'm trying to say here. Um, as far as Christ being made out of crystal energy and monoatomic gold, and he was saying that like when Christ, Yahusha disappeared in the Bible, he went to Egypt and went into the crypts of the pharaohs and was eating the monatomic. I'm like, dude, whatever like hallucinogenics you're taking, that's cool. I hope that it's helping you out for whatever you need. But again, same thing. I told him, hey, I will openly debate you. Like, let's have a live stream about it. I'd be more than happy to show you how you're wrong. And I think that he might actually be preaching some type of like Jesuit doctrine, because the Pharisees and the Sadducees, the Pharisees specifically, are like what the modern day Jesuit order evolved out of. And I think he's talking like some weird Nephilim doctrine with the stuff that he's saying, because like he goes on weird tangents about Sirius A and Sirius B, things that aren't even real. Like, I mean, if we're going by what the Bible says, what's pertinent in the Bible. So there is some Nephilim doctrine being said here. And truthfully, the only reason why I bring it up is, like I said, maybe it's not, like, I'm not saying he's purposely doing that. I'm not saying either of those guys are purposely doing anything. But if you want to be part of a community where we're like, hey, there's bad people doing bad things in the world, well, I think first and foremost, we should talk about how the Bible is a tool to assist with that. And it's not about just sitting there and being like, Jesus is coming, don't worry. It's about knowing, okay, well, this is the doctrine of man. Like, this is what people do. And having the knowledge and foresight to know that, that's my main thing is this. If they're going to enslave us, right, with this New World Order, the Jesuit doctrine is going to come to fruition. We're all going to be living in pods and eating whatever, and the whole world's going to be doomed. Okay, like, yeah, and if you want to rise up against that and fight against that and go to take, bear arms against that, by all means, go right ahead. I'm not saying that that's, like, there's anything wrong with that. I think Zach had even tried to, like, ask me, like, well, what's your solution? Right? And I was like, well, my solution is to live my life as a good person, and if shit hits the fan, yeah, I'm like taking care of my family, right? Like, not gonna worry about standing up against a fascist evil tyranny of whatever. No, dude. Like, if things get bad enough to where we have to worry about that kind of stuff, it ain't gonna be a matter of like banding together and taking up arms. It's gonna be a matter of like self-preservation and get the fuck out of like civilization areas and live in the woods, in the wilderness and shit for like a while. Personally, that's what I think. But yeah, so again, I still have an open invitation to both those guys, though. I'd love to talk to them and, debate them about their views of things. And even I would love to debate Zach on it. Like, hey, let's talk about how the Bible is not fake and how it's actually real and pertinent. And again, like I said, I was guilty of thinking like the 666 and, Babylon and all these things in Gematria and the Catholic Church and the Jesuit order, the Holy See, the Vatican. I mean, don't get me wrong, man. I understand what has happened and Catholicism. Oh my God, like I don't even want to. That's a whole other thing we could talk about, right? How Catholicism is not even. It's. I mean, it's the leaven. It's the Pharisee leaven that Jesus warns about, or Yahushua warns about. You can't add or take away things from the Bible, and they've added a bunch of books to the Bible, a bunch of weird doctrine, things like purgatory, things like, communing with the dead, and transconfiguration, which there's a lot of things that I'm like, okay, yeah, it makes no sense, but it's like the most pertinent religion in the world, pretty much, if not the second most or third most. So, but let's talk about let's talk about where people get this idea of the end of the world, right? So we look at Peter, 1 Peter 4:7, and we look at the King James Version. And it says, but the end of all things is at hand, right? So they're like, oh, okay, they're talking about the end of the world or whatever. Well, that's nice, but if we look at what it's really saying, uh, it's saying that the end has drawn near of all things. Be clear-minded and be sober for the purpose of prayers. So this word here of all things, right, is a word that means like the whole or every kind of. Well, what is it that could be every kind of and the whole thing and the all of and well, it's talking about the covenant, the old covenant, right? Because if we even look here, King Agrippa, I consider myself fortunate to stand before you today to defend myself against all the accusations of the Jews. So every accusation that they had, that they're talking about every accusation that they did make, right? So an all-encompassing, not a, like, the end of everything. And again, he's talking about the telos, right? The end goal of all things. So they're talking about all things that were spoken of in the Old Testament, and things that everything that Christ spoke of, right? And again, you have Matthew 13:49 in the King James Version, and again said, so shall it be at the end of the world, the angels shall come forth and sever the wicked from among the just. Well, here's the problem with that. That word, oh man, hold on, let me go back. 1349, that word is age, not world. So King James Version just like explicitly is like, well, yeah, we're going to throw the word. No, like this, I mean, you can see here they use that word world a lot, but it's not the correct way to use it, because even the NAS version has it as age and beginning of time, and then they want to like sit and say that means world, but it has like, no, that's not what it means at all. And if we look at Strong's, it literally says an age, a cycle, especially of the present age, as contrasted with the future age, and one of a series of ages stretching to infinity. Right? So, he's literally what he's saying in this verse. I mean, let's just like take it for what it is. So will it be at the end of this age, this current age that he's talking about when he's writing, right? Writing to his contemporary audience, the angels will come and separate the wicked from the righteous and throw them into the fiery furnace where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Very common phrase used. Have you understood all these things? Yes, they answered. Then he told them, for this reason, every scribe who has been discipled in the kingdom of heaven is like a homeowner who brings out of his storeroom new treasures as well as old. So when Yahusha had finished these parables, he withdrew from that place. So what is he talking about here, right? I mean, truthfully, what are we really looking at here? If we go back and look, I mean, he's speaking in a bunch of parables here. Which parables? Oh, okay, people, riddles and mysteries. And no, parables, it's a way for him to have related to the agrarian culture of the people at that time. Yeah, it's not like they were sophisticated people that were like, sitting at a computer all day and on their cell phone. Like, no, like these are people, like a lot of the ecclesia were fishermen. The original, like I see it, the disciples were fishermen. They were like laborers that he said, I shall make you fishermen and you shall become fisher of men. Okay? So parables are literally just that. I mean, Enoch even has parables, the oldest written book on the face of the earth. And he's got parables that he talks about. But so let's talk about this. So, I mean, I'll read all through Matthew 13. I don't care. We need to have it all in context. So let's read Matthew 13. So it said, that same day, Yahusha went out of the house and sat by the sea. Such large crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and sat down while all the people stood on the shore. So he's like, okay, they're starting to crowd around me. I'm getting out of here. I'm going to go on a boat so I can just be alone. And he told them many things in parables, saying, oh, here's the parable that's agrarian, right? He said, a farmer went out to sow his seed. As he was sowing, some seeds fell along the path, and the birds came and devoured them. Oh, what's the seeds? Oh, that's right. It's the believers, the early ecclesia, the early church, if you want to say that, the people that were listening to his word and believing his word. Some of them would hear it, and they wouldn't believe it. And they'd be the seeds that were devoured by the birds. Okay, and also, just so you know, the word birds here, used a lot. And it actually has relevance in Revelation 2, where it said that the vultures are told to prepare for a feast of all the dead bodies of people that were going to be in the city when Rome came and sacked the city and burned down the temple. Yeah. But anyway, so that's what he's talking about. Some of the seeds, right? So some of the people fell on the rocky ground where they did not have much soil. They sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. But when the sun arose, the seedlings were scorched and they withered because they had no root. Well, what is he saying? The sun, the light, he is the light, be salt and light, right? And so they kind of had it, but then they were like, nah, they dropped it. As soon as they had it, they maybe thought about it for a second, but they had no root. Nothing had taken root, so they didn't believe. Other seeds, so other believers, right, people that were listening to his word, fell among the thorns, which grew up and choked the seedlings. So what is that? That's people that want to believe, but the world at large is the thorns, that the doctrine of men, right, the doctrine of Nephilim, of fallen angels, fallen watchers, I should say, will look at you and be like, you're so stupid. How could you believe this, right? Like, I mean, that's like what a lot of people that believe in gematria would say. Oh my God, I can't believe you believe this. It's all mind control. It's all so. And there's some people that maybe would be like, oh, okay, they'd be shaken from their roots, and they'd be like, okay, they got choked out by the thorns of the world, and no longer believe. They got convinced otherwise. Still, other seeds fell on good soil and produced a crop, 100-fold, 60-fold, or 30-fold, right? So, saying, hey, yeah, you were able to go and you were able to speak the word. You were able to educate people on the word, and the word resonated. And even if it's a person that already believes, if we can teach each other more, there's nothing wrong with that. The knowledge is power is a real thing. That phrase. So he says, he who has ears, so everyone, right, let him hear. So he's saying, hey, if you have ears, listen to what I just told you. Understand what I just told you. Then the disciples came to Yahusha and asked, why do you speak to the people in parables? Oh, wow, okay, so we're about to get the answer, maybe. He replied, right, so he responded and said to them himself, the knowledge of the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven has been given to you, right? So to you, disciples, you know on a deeper level, but not to them. So not to the people, these masses of people that I'm speaking to that are farmers and laborers, and a lot of them were homeless and lame, but there were some that were charlatans like whores. There were some that were tax collectors, some that were in the actual temple hierarchy as well. There's all different kinds of people there. But he's saying here, the knowledge of the mysteries, right, of the kingdom of heaven have been given to you, the disciples, but not to them, the people that I'm speaking in parables to. Whoever has will be given more, and he will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what he has will be taken away from him. Knowledge is what he's talking about. The knowledge of the secrets. This is why I speak to them in parables. Though seeing, they do not see. Though hearing, they do not hear or understand. In them, the prophecy of Isaiah is fulfilled. You will be ever hearing, but never understanding. You will be ever seeing, but never perceiving. For this people's heart has grown callous. They hardly hear with their ears, and they have closed their eyes. Meanwhile, they might see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their hearts, and turn, and I would heal them. So he's literally quoting directly from Isaiah, saying, hey, this is what Isaiah was talking about. Again, a major prophet foretelling of the coming of Meshuach, which is who is talking about this right now. He's literally telling the disciples, and I mean, a lot of the people knew the Old Testament. I mean, obviously, right? That was the doctrine. That's what they followed. John was Paul was a Pharisee, like high up, very high up Pharisee. And he realized, oh my gosh, I'm like following the path of wickedness and evil. I need to follow Yahusha instead. And he gave it all up to do that. But blessed are your eyes because they see. So you're talking to the disciples, your eyes because they see, and your ears because they hear. For truly, so amen. For truly I tell you, many prophets and righteous men longed to see what you see, but they did not see it, and to hear what you hear, but did not hear it. Many prophets and righteous men, right, of the Old Testament, of the Old Covenant, they wanted to see Meshuach. They wanted to see their prophecies come to fruition, but they didn't see it, and they couldn't hear it because they were killed, or they died of old age. But most of them were killed, just so you know. Consider then the parable of the sower. When anyone hears the message of the kingdom but does not understand it, the evil one, right, the malicious one, comes and snatches away what was sown in his heart. This is the seed sown along the path. Oh, okay, look it. He's like spelling it out for us. Isn't that crazy how he does that? The seed sown on the rocky ground is the one who hears the word and promptly receives it with joy. But since he has no root, he remains for only a season, right? So a temporary amount of time. When trouble or persecution comes because of the word, he quickly falls away. So he's saying, okay, if somebody were to come up to him and want to persecute him, or if there's a hard time in his life, they're like, oh, okay, well, yeah, obviously God's not real and Jesus isn't real because this bad stuff happened to me. The seed sown among the thorns is the one who hears the word, but the worries of this world, right? Let's look at this word. Aenos, right? Oh, again, aeon, right? The cycle, the age, the time, the present time, as contrasted with a future age. Interesting how that's used, right? And the deceitfulness of wealth choke the world, and it becomes unfruitful. Cannot be a first fruit if you're unfruitful, right? But the seed sown on good soil is the one who hears the word and understands it. He indeed bears fruit and produces a crop, 100-fold, 60-fold, or 30-fold. Yahusha presented another parable to them. The kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while everyone was asleep, his enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and slipped away. When the wheat sprouted and bore grain, then the weeds also appeared. The owner's servants came to him and said, Sir, don't you sow good seed in your field? Where then did all the weeds come from? An enemy did this, he replied. So the servants asked him, Do you want us to go and pull them up? No, he said. If you pull the weeds now, you might uproot the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the harvest. The reaping. Wow, where do we know that word from? Well, if we look here, the reaping, the harvesting of crops, spoken of in Revelation and in John, right? Revelation 14:15. Another angel came out of the temple, crying in a voice loud to the one sitting on the cloud. Who's the cloud? Who's sitting on the cloud? Who is coming on the clouds? Oh, Yahusha came on the clouds. He said, put forth the sickle of you and reap, because now has time the hour to reap, because has ripened the harvest of the earth. Interesting. Because it even says, at the proper time, I will tell the harvesters, first collect the weeds and tie them in bundles to be burned. Then gather the wheat into my barn, my repository. Interesting. Yahusha put before them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed that a man planted in his field. Although it is the smallest of all seeds, yet it grows into the largest of garden plants and becomes a tree, so that the birds of the air come and nest in its branches. Again, the birds, right? Come and nest in the branches of the mustard tree. He told them still another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like the yeast that a woman took and mixed into 3 measures of flour until all of it was leavened. Yahusha spoke all these things to the crowds in parables. He did not tell them anything without using a parable. So was fulfilled what was spoken through the prophet. I will open my mouth in parables. I will utter things hidden since the foundation of the world. And that word for world, cosmo, is actually meaning the world. Not aeon, but actually the cosmo, right? Cosmos. Talking of the actual heavenly body of the world. But, well, then who said that? What prophet said that? I will open my mouth in parables? Oh, look at that. Psalm 78:2. Right? That literally says, I will open my mouth in parables. I will utter things hidden from of old that we have heard and known and our fathers have relayed to us. Interesting. And it's funny, too, because if Psalm is written by David, but look what this says here. Look what Yahusha is saying. So was fulfilled what was spoken through the prophet. So the prophet did not speak it. It was spoken through him, which there's a lot to say with that on the book of Psalm. The book of Psalm is a very interesting book of the Bible. If you understand what is being said. Then Yahusha dismissed the crowds and went into the house. His disciples came to him and said, explain to us the parable of the weeds in the field. He replied, the one, okay, meaning like, him, Yahuwah, who sows the good seed is the Son of Man. So Yahusha, but by extension Yahuwah. The field is the world, again, cosmos, right, meaning the world. And the good seed represents the sons of the kingdom. The weeds are the sons of the evil one, right? The evil one that would come in and throw the weed seeds into your food or into your wheat crop. And the enemy who sows them is the devil, diablos. Okay, very interesting word there, right? The harvest is the end of the age. End of the age. Okay, again. The end of the age. Años. And the harvesters are angels. Well, that's what was literally just said in Revelation, right? Another angel came out of the temple, crying in a voice loud to the one sitting on the cloud, "Put forth your sickle and reap, because the hour to reap has come, because the harvest of the earth has ripened." And the one sitting upon the cloud swung the sickle of him upon the earth, and the earth was harvested. And another angel came out of the temple of heaven, also having the sickle, a sharp sickle. And another angel came out, having authority over the fire, right? The fire that he's... So if you guys understand what is going on here, literally this is what it's saying right here in Revelation. Let's read it. Still another angel with authority over the fire. Well, what fire? The fire? What could the fire be? It's the fire that he was talking about when he said that all the weeds will be bundled up and thrown into the fire. Right? Did he not just say that? What was that in 13? Let's look at 1334. No, sorry, it's even further back than that. I'm sorry, we gotta go back. But I mean, I just want you guys to understand, like, this is what, like, that's why there's no mystery to this. There's no, like, what does it mean? Like, he's literally saying. Yeah, until the harvest. At the proper time, I will tell the harvesters, so who are the harvesters? The angels, first collect the weeds and tie them in bundles to be burned. Well, guess who's got the authority over the fire that will burn, right? I mean, literally, it's the word fire. Like, fire, the heat of the sun, lightning, strife, trials, the eternal fire. Okay, but it's still saying the same thing. It's referencing back to that. So I'm sorry, that's just kind of funny to me. Let's see, where were we? Yeah, the harvest at the end of there. The harvesters are angels. As the weeds are collected and burned in the fire, so it will be at the end of the age. So it's saying the same thing. At the end of the age, which is what Revelation 14:18 is talking about, right? Because the angel came from the altar, which, if you know what the temple is, how the temple is set up, well, let's have a look-see. There's actually a really nice diagram. I think it's from christianstudy.com. Let's see what the layout of the second temple. Like, there's a really nice diagram that, here it is right here. Yep. Okay. So this is what the temple actually looked like inside, like the interior of it. Okay. Oh man, this is like so low resolution. It's hard to see. I actually want to get a higher resolution one. Perfect. Okay, that's fine. So look at this. You had your brazen altar, right? Which, it's funny because when people speak of like how Yahusha is mentioned of looking in Revelation, saying that he had feet that were like burned bronze, and people are like, oh, that means he was black. No, it doesn't. It means that because he is the temple, right? He is the inner temple. The feet, the bottom of this entire area, is the brazen altar. And you go up, you got the 12 steps, then you've got the holy place, and then you've got behind the veil the MHP, the most holy place. But anyway, so it said the angel came from the altar. So it either came from the brazen altar, or it could have came from the incense altar, which that would have been more like where the mouthpiece of Yahusha would be, right? And then this is the head, the Holy of Holies. So kind of interesting. that it said they came from the altar. Uh, but then he called out in a loud voice to the angel with the sharp sickle, "Swing your sharp sickle and gather the clusters of grapes from the vine of the earth, because its grapes are ripe." So the angel swung his sickle over the earth and gathered the grapes of the earth, and he threw them into the great winepress of God's wrath. And the winepress was trodden outside the city, and the blood that flowed from it rose as high as the bridles of the horses, right? For a distance of 1,600 stadia. So, I mean, yeah. Closing of the age, destruction of the temple. And it says, "The Son of Man will send out his angels, and they will weed out of his kingdom every cause of sin and all who practice lawlessness. And they'll throw them into the fiery furnace, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." Again, that word used, that phrase used, weeping of gnashing of teeth. "Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. He who has ears, let him hear." Again, if you have ears, listen to what I'm saying. "The kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in a field. When a man found it, he hid it again, and in his joy he went and sold all he had bought and bought the field." Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant in search of fine pearls. When he found one very precious pearl, he went away and sold all he had and bought it. Once again, the kingdom of heaven is like a dragnet that was cast into the sea and caught fish of every kind. Interesting, like fisher of men. When it was full, the men pulled it ashore. Then they sat down and sorted the good fish into containers, but threw the bad away. So will it be at the end of the age. The angels will come and separate the wicked from the righteous, and throw them into the fiery furnace, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Have you understood all of these things? Yes, they answered. Then he told them, "For this reason, every scribe who has been discipled in the kingdom of heaven is like a homeowner who brings out of his storeroom new treasures as well as old." What are you saying here? I'm giving you new prophecy. I'm giving you the new, and you have the old. You have the Old Testament, the words of the old prophets. When Yahusha had finished these parables, he withdrew from that place. Coming to his hometown, he taught the people in their synagogue, right? And they were astonished. "Where did this man get such wisdom and miraculous powers?" they asked. "Is this not the carpenter's son? Isn't his mother's name Mary? And aren't his brothers James," right? That would be Jacob, and Joseph, Simeon, and Judas? Aren't all his sisters with us as well? Where then did this man get all of these things? Like, how did he know all this?" And they took offense at him. But Yahusha said to them, "Only in his hometown and in his own household, is a prophet without honor." And which, I mean, if you look at what happened to all the Old Testament prophets, they all were pretty much killed. If they were killed and slaughtered, it was because they were not received well in Jerusalem by their own people. And he did not do many miracles there because of their unbelief. So that's all Matthew 13. Does it make sense, though? Like, are we getting the gist of it now? Revelation already happened. He already spoke of it. He's talking about the end of the age. Well, what was the age? The age ended at 70 AD. That was the closing of the age and the beginning of the new covenant. Now, like I said, I'm not going to sit here and say that there's not a probability or possibility of a great judgment either, because I think that there's things in Scripture that actually support that. I'm working on that right now, working through that, so I have an actual definitive answer on that. But no one knows when that would happen. Death is a very interesting topic in the Bible if you actually understand what they're saying, because to Jesus himself, when he speaks of the parable of Lazarus and the rich man, and I talked about this last time too. And I wish that, you can't really hear that live stream because they blocked the The volume, it's like uneligible. But okay, so in John 11:11, so this is Yahusha. Somebody comes and tells him, "Hey, Lazarus, he's not doing well." Okay, well, by the time that guy had gotten there, Lazarus had already died, and Yahusha knew that. So after he said this, he told them, the disciples, our friend, right, Philos, like Philadelphia, oh yeah, like the Church of Philadelphia, meaning brother, actually, like a brotherly friend, close bonded. Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep. Asleep, and I mean that's like literally the word, right? So if you look at this word, it literally means to be asleep. Sometimes the sleep of death, but very interesting because it's just like this word, meaning taking a rest and sleeping. So that word is meaning like sleep. So he's telling him, hey, he's fallen asleep, but I am going there to wake him up. Literally, to wake out of sleep. That's what this word means. And it's the only time it's used in the Bible. Literally, one occurrence ever to wake him up out of sleep. His disciples replied, Lord, if he's sleeping, then he's going to get better, right? Like, that's what they're trying to say. Like, well, if he's sleeping, just let him sleep. If he's sick, let him sleep it off. They thought that Yahusha was talking about actual sleep. So this word right here, meaning hypnos, sleep, like spiritual sleep, but figuratively. But it means like sleep. Like, okay, you guys thought I was talking about that he's actually asleep. But he was speaking about the death of Lazarus. Thanato, right? So Yahusha told them plainly, like blatantly, right? I mean, literally, like frankly, bluntly. He's like, okay, like, and this happens a lot actually. If you read through the Bible, and the disciples are like he's like, beware the leaven of the Pharisee and the Sadducees. And like, what, is he mad that we didn't bring bread? Should we go get some bread? He's like, no, like, don't, you know. And so it's kind of funny actually. It's kind of like like Yahusha's like, okay, these guys are literally as close to prophets, like modern day prophets, as I'm going to get. They literally are being told the secrets of my Father, of the kingdom of heaven. They have so much knowledge that they don't even know what they're experiencing, but they knew, but realistically they didn't have the full grasp of it all the time. And he's like, they still don't get it. So he just told them plainly, oh my God, like he's like facepalm moment. And he said, and for your sake, I'm glad I was not there so that you may believe. But let us go to him. Well, what is that supposed to mean, right? Well, hey, it's good that I wasn't there when he died, because if I went to wake him up right now, people would be like, no, he was just faking being dead. But what happens? Well, let's see. Then Thomas called Didymus, again, they have different names. Yahusha actually prescribes them names based on their deeds with him. Said to his fellow disciples, let us also go so that we may die with him. That's interesting. They want to die with him. What is that? What, like, they want to die with Yahusha? Yeah, exactly what it means. Like, we got to go with him in case something happens. And it's funny because that word again goes back to apotnesko, like about to die or wither or decay. When Yahusha arrived, he found that Lazarus had already spent 4 days in the tomb. So this dude was in there for 4 days. There ain't no faking that. Okay, you'd be done. Dunzo. Super dead. Like, starting to decompose. Now, Bethany was near Jerusalem, a little less than 2 miles away. And many of the Yahudim, Jews, had come to Martha and Mary to console them in the loss of their brother. So, probably because they were fairly well-known people. They had a big following as well, very involved in the church, right, in the hierarchy. When Lazarus had died, a lot of people came to them to console, grieve with them, probably give them, bring them food and things that they needed to get through the grieving process. So when Martha heard that Yahusha was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed at home. Martha said to Yahusha, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. That's why he said, that's why I'm glad I wasn't there. But even now, I know that God will give you whatever you ask him. Right? So she's like, whatever you want to happen with him is going to happen. Your brother will rise again, Yahusha told her. Martha replied, I know that he'll rise again in the resurrection at the last day. Interesting. Right? So she's talking to him. She's like, well, yeah, he's going to rise again in the resurrection of the last day. So yeah, I know he's going to, but I miss him now. But Yahusha said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live even though he dies. I mean, there's your answer right there. He literally said, I am the resurrection. Right? And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? Well, let's look at the Greek here and see what this is actually saying. Everyone living and believing in me never shall not die to the age. Believe you this? Well, there's that word again. Aeona, right? Because will never die. So this word here, apothane, meaning like, wither, decay, right? That's why Thomas said, hey, we got to go with him in case he dies. We'll die with him. And then time or place, right? This word. And then this is like an including, like all-inclusive, like he, she, they, whatever, them. And then that age again. The Aeona. Right? So it's very interesting. You read Strong's, and even then you'll get the wrong impression of it because, well, yeah, they'll never die. Well, no, it's saying that they will not die in the age. Right? It's very confusing, I think, if you're not really looking, like, don't know what to look for. But literally, this is what it says. Everyone living and believing in me never not shall die. So they're not ever going to die to the age. And he asked her, do you believe this? Yes, Lord, she answered. I believe that you are the Christos, the Christ, the Son of God, who was to come into the world. After Martha had said this, she went back and called her sister Mary aside to tell her, the teacher is here and is asking for you. This word here, teacher, master, they call him that. The Pharisees have called him that as well when he's in the temple. And when Mary heard this, she got up quickly and went to him. Now Yahusha had not yet entered the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. So he didn't go anywhere. He stayed where he was at. When the Yahudim, who were in the house consoling Mary, saw how quickly she got up and went out, they followed her, supposing she was going to the tomb to mourn there. So they're like, oh, we should go follow her so we can console her and grieve with her. When Mary came to Yahusha and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Same thing that Martha said. When Yahusha saw her weeping, and the Yahudim who had come with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. So, meaning he had indignation in his spirit, right? The pneumatai, and troubled, agitated, stirred up. So he said, okay, where have you laid him? He asked. Come and see, Lord, they answered. Yahusha wept. This is strong. John 11:35. Yahusha wept. Then the Yahudim said, "See how he loved him. See how much he cared." Right? And this is uh, philos again, meaning like brotherly love. Right? There's actually different words for Greek words of like love. There's like eros, phileo. Um, what's the other one that I'm not remembering right now? Eros, phileos, and I don't know. There's relevance to it actually in one of the scriptures, though. But anyway, um, but some of them asked, "Could not this man who opened the eyes of the blind also have kept Lazarus from dying?" Yahusha, once again deeply moved, came to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. Interesting. Almost like that's where he was laid, right? "Take away the stone," Yahusha said. "Lord, by now he stinks, so he's gonna be like decomposing," said Martha, the sister of the dead man. "It has already been 4 days." Yahusha replied, "Did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone. Then Yahusha lifted his eyes upward, right? Anyo, so to the heavens, and said, "Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you would always hear me, but I say this for the benefit of the people standing here, so that they may believe that you sent me." After Yahusha had said this, he called out in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." The man who had been dead, again, dead, right, came out with his hands and feet bound in strips of linen, and his face wrapped in a headcloth. "Unwrap him and let him go," Yahusha told them. Therefore many of the Yahudim who had come to Mary and had seen what Yahusha did believed in him. So that was a very pivotal moment for him exerting his, authority, right? Because he holds the keys to Hades. So he said, "Look, now these people know, because he's been here for 4 days. He's dead, and I just brought him back." But some of them went to the Pharisees and told them what Yahusha had done. So they got back into Jerusalem, and they're like, "Oh my God, you won't believe what happened." Then the chief priests and Pharisees convened the Sanhedrin, right? So it was a meeting place for the council, and said to each other, right? So they're like in this meeting place, and they're like, "What are we going to do? This man is performing many signs. If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him, and then the Romans will come and take away both our place and our nation." It's interesting, though, because that's what ended up happening anyway. But one of them, named Siphius, who was high priest that year, said to them, "You know nothing at all." So Siphius was like, "Hey, man, hold on. You do not realize that it is better for you that one man die for the people than that the whole nation perish." Siphius did not say this on his own. Instead, as high priest that year, he was prophesying that Yahusha would die for the nation. And not only for the nation, but for also the scattered children of God, to gather them together into one. Well, there's a lot of different symbology throughout the Bible talking about that, about the two olive branches that are made one, right? With the what is that called? When you take a plant and you attach another plant onto it, that's talked about. But yeah, it's talking about the Israelites and the Gentiles. So from that day on, they plotted to kill him. As a result, Yahusha no longer went about publicly among the Yahudim, but he withdrew to a town called Ephraim in an area near the wilderness, and he stayed there with the disciples. So, anyway, talking about death, right? Touching on death, it was interesting because he said that originally he said, well, he slept, right? That's what he said. Lazarus sleeps, but they didn't understand it, so he had to put it in a way that they understand. Well, what does that mean, though, sleep? Well, if we look in Luke. Okay, 16, 21 probably will be good. Okay, so there you go. So this is the parable of Lazarus, right? So, and a beggar named Lazarus lay at his gate covered with sores. They're talking about a rich man. There's a rich man, he had a bunch of money, blah, 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 and longing to be fed with the crumbs that fell from the rich man's table. Even the dogs came and licked his sores. One day, the beggar died, right? So, again, that word decayed, withered, died, and was carried by the angels to Abraham's side. And the rich man also died, right, and was buried. In Hades, well, this word here, Hades meaning Tartarus, right, where he was in torment, he looked up. Well, that's not really what this says. If we look at the Greek here, it says, and in Hades, having lifted up the eyes of him. Well, what we just saw was that Yahusha lifted his eyes up, right? Oh man, where was that? Okay, so let's look at this, right? And so this word here, lifted his eyes upward. Well, we're looking at this, right? Lifted, iren. This word, eparis, having lifted up. But do they have the same root word? No, they don't. So this word, ero, is the root word for the one that was when Yahusha lifted his eyes up. But this one here means to raise up. So here's what I'm trying to get at with this. If we read this, when it's saying having lifted up the eyes of him, it's not talking about that he looked upward, right? Because that would have been used in the same way Yahusha lifted his eyes upward. But this is saying that he opened his eyes. He was asleep. And he opened his eyes, being in torment, and he saw Abraham from afar and Lazarus in the bosom of him. So he was in Abraham's bosom. Well, that's interesting. Didn't it say that he was lifted up by the angels and taken? Well, yeah, that's because it's the same thing. They're in the same place. So yeah, not even by his side, but he was in Abraham's bosom, and that's said multiple times throughout the Bible. By the way, that we go into Abraham's bosom. So he cried out, "Father Abraham, have mercy on me, and send Lazarus to dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, for I am in agony in this fire." Well, this is a different kind of fire, right? Like a flame. Interesting. So different kind of burning fire than the one that the angels were taught that the angels were supposed to throw the weeds into, right? It's a different word, a different kind of meaning. It's because it's a different time. It's a entirely different situation. But Abraham answered, "Child," right? "Remember that during your lifetime you received your good things, while Lazarus received bad things. But now he is comforted here, while you are left to suffer. And besides all this, a great chasm has been fixed between us and you, so that even those who wish cannot cross from here, where they are, to you, nor can anyone cross from there, where you are, where the rich man is, to us. Then I beg you, Father," he said, "send Lazarus to my father's house, for I have 5 brothers, and let him warn them, so that they will not also end up in this place of torment." But Abraham replied, "They have Moses and the prophets. Let your brothers listen to them." Interesting. So he's like, why should we bring Lazarus back to listen to... Oh, man. Very interesting. No, Father Abraham said, but if someone is sent to them from the dead, they will repent. Again, Necron, right? So meaning actually from the dead. Then Abraham said to him, if they do not listen to Moses and the prophets, they will not be persuaded even if somebody rises from the dead. Interesting. Yahushua said to his disciples, it is inevitable that stumbling blocks will come, but woe to the one through whom they come. It would be better for him to have a millstone hung around his neck and to be thrown into the sea than to cause one of these little ones, children, right, small people learning, because it was the early days of the ecclesia, to stumble. Watch yourselves. If your brother sins, rebuke him, and if he repents, forgive him. So anyway, going on with that, something there about death, right? Because there's some things that I can that I'm working on right now, trying to understand like what death really is in the Bible, what happens when we die, when we lift our eyes up, when we open our eyes, and are we in Abraham's bosom, or are we in the place of torment, the weeping and gnashing of teeth? Anyway, so yeah, that's just wanted to talk for a little bit about that, and about why we shouldn't worry too much about these number of the beast rituals and all this, because man, it's already happened. There's nothing that the only thing that can happen is a solar flare comes and wipes us all out, or nuclear annihilation. Okay, like, and can a solar flare even really happen? I don't know. I don't think so, but then again, who knows, right? So don't be worried about numbers that they're putting out there in their rituals and stuff like that. The Jesuit order I think they might just be trying to assimilate prophecy and scare people, but they have no power. They can't do anything, man. They're just bad people trying to further a bad agenda. But all right, guys. Other than that, I'll be back, and also my my invitation still stands to that RPM Trey Vietnam and to DK Stonewood. And again, even to anybody who wants to like talk about Bible and debate about how it can't be real and how it's fake and how it's mind control. Any one of y'all, I'd be happy to sit down and we can have a discourse on it. You know, that's what we're here to do. We're here to discuss things with each other, talk to each other, learn from each other. And I mean, no hate in any of this, just so you know. I'm not like trying to be spiteful against Zach or DK Stonewood or RPM Trey Vietnam or any of these people. I'm really not. I'm not trying to be like seditious or mean or anything. I'm just like, hey, like you're saying something that doesn't make sense to me. Like I don't agree with it, and I have proof as to why I shouldn't agree with it. So let's talk about proof, if that's what you're all about, right? Because that's what gematria is. It's numbers. People lie, but numbers don't, right? So if you like proof, I've got proof. So yeah. Anyway, all right, guys. Take it easy, and until the next time.